Hey friends, welcome back to Mental Health and Makeup. My name is Simone. I'm a licensed professional counselor with over 10 years providing therapy. I'm really excited to get into today's topic, but before we dive in, make sure you hit the follow button so that you can join our discussion as it relates to mental health and some basic self-care preparation in the form of makeup. If you have not already, please share these videos with a friend so that we can all tend to our mental health and wellness, because it is a new year and time to do new things. Well, now that we've got that out the way, today we are going to be talking about boundaries, why we need them, how to set them, and the best way that they can be effective in our relationships. Let's get started talking about boundaries. Boundaries are the rules and limits we set for ourselves within relationships, and it's also how we enforce them. In a lot of my therapy sessions, when we talk about boundary setting, people often don't really understand what that means, how they're supposed to enforce it, and then they get really confused when they think that they're setting boundaries and the person just isn't responding appropriately. So this is something that I have to spend a lot of time talking with people about how to do effectively. No relationship works well if boundaries are not set and implemented. Boundaries are essentially the rule book for relationships, and I don't just mean intimate relationships. It's the same for friendships, how we interact with our family members, our relationships on the job. It essentially teaches people how to treat you. Here are just a few benefits of setting boundaries. Setting boundaries promotes autonomy, improves emotional health and well-being, allows for less stressful relationships. Setting sets clear expectations for all parties involved, improves our ability to engage in self-care, increases our level of self-respect, and improves respect from others. Boundary setting also decreases the risk of burnout as it relates to engaging with others in relationships. We need boundaries so that we can allow for a level of consistency in how we engage and how we allow people to treat us. There is no relationship that exists that does not benefit from consistency. Furthermore, we all deserve to be able to speak up for ourselves, talk about how a person's behavior is impacting us, and discuss how we would like for things to change if we're going to stay around. There are a lot of reasons why we need boundaries, but I'm just going to focus on two for the purposes of this video. First reason is because people are not mind readers. No one will know what it is that we want or expect from them unless we tell them. The second reason is because effective communication benefits every area of our life. Setting boundaries requires effective communication. I feel like when people think about boundary setting, we instantly go to relationships. The reality is that all relationships require boundary setting. I was just watching an episode of Abbott Elementary from the end of last season where Janine's mother came to visit her at school, and they gave a little bit of history between them, which is that her mother would come around mostly when she needed something, but wasn't there to support all the moments that Janine needed her there for. And long story short, by the end of the episode, Janine was able to do what made her comfortable in terms of helping her mother, while also setting a boundary by not overextending herself. And she also clearly defined what will happen in the future. This made her feel better than she had in a long time. And that's just one example. We need boundaries in our work relationships so we can feel comfortable and confident in our role at work, in our relationships with supervisors, co-workers. We need boundaries with our friends. Difficult friends, passive friends, all of these relationships require boundaries. Here's how to set an effective boundary. First, what you're going to do is you are going to address a particular behavior. So what that sounds like is, hey, so-and-so, you did this thing, and that made me feel this way. You're going to fill in the blanks with authentic feelings from real situations, and you're going to be as honest as you can while also being assertive from a place of calm, confident energy so that everyone understands that this is a serious time to really slow down, focus in, and be heard while also expressing how you feel. After you have that honest conversation, what you want to do is you want to say what will happen if your boundary is unable to be met by the person. Let me give you a realistic example of boundary setting in a clinical situation. So if I'm in therapy with a person and they have a tendency to use very vulgar language, they swear a lot, one way that I could set a boundary is saying, hey, I appreciate your desire to express yourself the way you choose. However, I must tell you that that language is pretty offensive to me. And if you could refrain from swearing and using such harsh language, I would really appreciate it. That is an example of an effective conversation about a behavior that a person's engaging in that is making another person uncomfortable, how we can discuss that, and what you can ask for moving forward. So this is where things get really tricky. What if you have this conversation, you feel comfortable with how effective you are in describing your problem and asking for a change in behavior, and the person is not willing to or cannot seem to remember to make the change? This is where a lot of people get messed up with boundary setting. The one thing that my example was missing, that a lot of us miss when it comes to boundary setting, is that we need to clearly define the consequence for repeatedly crossing this boundary. Going back to our example, what that would sound like is if you're unwilling or unable to respect this wish, then I'd be more than happy to refer you to a therapist who does not have the same objection that I have to this type of language. I'd be more than happy to help you make that change. So do you guys see how we implemented the consequence of crossing that boundary? To be honest, boundaries mean very little if there is no consequence that's going to encourage the person to change their behavior. Another part of boundary setting that people have a really difficult time with is enforcing the consequence. But I have to tell you guys, this is literally the most important part of boundary setting. People make a really big mistake when they offer a consequence for a particular behavior that they are unwilling to follow through with. For example, if I tell someone, hey, if you keep doing this thing, I'm never going to talk to you again, but it's your best friend, it's unlikely that you're never going to talk to them again. You're going to have a hard time following through with that consequence. And essentially, all that does is teach people that they can't trust your word. And you're going to have an even more difficult time having these conversations with people. To wrap all of that up, what you want to remember is that you have to set a consequence for overstepping the boundary that you set. And that consequence has to be realistic to the extent that you're willing to follow through with what you said. One of the hardest things about boundary setting is that it requires us to make hard decisions when it's time to follow through with what we said that we would do. Boundary setting can even result in the loss of friendships, the loss of jobs, the ending of relationships, and that can be really hard for us. A lot of people avoid setting boundaries altogether because they recognize that if they say something, they have to do something. And they'd rather deal with a particular type of behavior than lose a person altogether. This is a personal choice that every person has to make for themselves. My recommendation is that when you have these open and honest conversations about how you do and do not want to be treated, you think of a consequence that is something you can manage. I'll give you an example. If I have a friend that is in a relationship that I don't agree with, and they talk about it all the time, but they're unwilling to make any changes to the relationship, for example, breaking up with the person, instead of saying, if you don't break up with this person, I can't be your friend, you can say something more like, if you're unwilling to make a change to your situation, I don't know if I really want to keep having conversations with you about how they're treating you, because it makes me sad to hear you not being treated well. In this instance, what you've done is expressed how you feel, expressed the change that you want to see, and you've allowed for a reasonable option for what will happen if that change does not take place. Here's the part of boundaries that keeps us in a chokehold. When the behavior happens, which it will, listen, people are not going to follow our boundaries just because we ask them to. They will do the same thing again. When it happens, that is your opportunity to toss out a reminder. Hey, don't forget, I don't really want to hear these conversations about how badly your boyfriend treats you. It makes me uncomfortable. And once that continues to happen, at that point, then you set the hard stop. Hey, I'm not going to have this conversation, girl. I'll call you later. Or you know what? Can we talk about this other thing? I don't want to talk about that. Remember? One of the many reasons why people fail at setting boundaries consistently is because we aren't really willing to lose the thing that is at stake if we follow through with what we said. But we really have to understand that if there is a relationship that requires significant boundaries being set, losing that relationship might not be the worst thing, because now we're introducing a situation where we're unhappy with something that exists in our life. We don't feel like we have the autonomy to dictate how people treat us. We're stressed out. We feel like people don't respect us, and we're not really showing ourselves very much respect when we don't speak up for what we want or what we need. Whether we want to admit it or not, there are people in our lives that benefit from us not setting boundaries. So we're going to lose friends. Relationships are going to end. Jobs might get a little bit weird. But look at it like this. Any person that is upset with us for trying to create a better life for ourselves might not be worth maintaining a relationship with in the long run anyway. I know this hurts, but a lot of the important decisions that we need to make are very difficult decisions. People that love you and want to see the best for you will do their best to follow the boundaries that you set for them. Or at the very least, they'll be open to having a conversation with you about how things can work out for both of you. Pay attention to the people in your life who seem like they are interested in abiding by the rules that you're setting, especially if they've been around for a long time and they're unfamiliar with this new thing that you're doing for yourself. You'll notice who's on board and who really wants to support you, even if the process is hard for them, versus a person who really couldn't care less what it is that you're saying that you need for yourself if it requires change from them. Boundary setting really can weed out people in your life that are probably not the most supportive. You guys know that saying that if you want to know who your true friends are, ask them to help you move? Clinically, I would say if you want to know who your true friends are, set a new boundary. You'll get an opportunity to see a person's true colors. Okay, friends, this is the final makeup look. I hope you enjoyed this discussion about boundary setting. This process really can teach you a lot about yourself and a lot about the people that you have around you. Improved self-esteem is something that I can almost guarantee as you build and grow your ability to effectively set boundaries with the people in your life. Any relationship that is resistant to a boundary will require you to really challenge the role that that person plays in your life. And it's okay to make changes to that. You should be growing and figuring out how things work best for you as time passes. So don't be afraid of this process. Yes, it's difficult. Yes, it creates a lot of change, but the only things that aren't changing are dead things. So be open to the process. If you've watched this video and you feel like you have more questions or any feedback about setting boundaries, please leave me a comment down below. I'll get back with you and we can start a discussion. If this video was of any value to you, please press like and share with your friends. If you haven't done so already, turn your notifications on so that you're the first one to know when we have a new video posted every other week for Wellness Wednesday, along with other content that's coming your way. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.